Julie Walker and Tim Patterson are wild food guides in the Alberta foothills.
Some of the people do know the ecology, but a lot of people don't.
They know what to eat and when to eat it.
So this plant, it's understanding, when to harvest that and why you're harvesting it at.
The woods are getting a lot busier these days.
The whole foraging thing's really taken off in the last 3 years.
And foraging for wild food can be damaging.
Some of our ecosystems are very compromised. And if people were out there foraging wild onions and plants in the prairie ecosystem, it wouldn't take long before they would be gone forever.
Tim and Julie show people how to find dinner in the woods while leaving the forest intact.
So plants are more than just, oh look, I can eat that, right? Or I can use that as medicine.
First, you have to look at the leaves.
If you look at this plant and see the shape of the stem, the shape of the leaves, it's what they call a lance-shaped leaf. The leaves go around the stem in a whirl, and the real identifying feature is this beautiful white vein down the middle. And that's how to differentiate this plant from one that looks fairly similar. This is called fireweed. And when fireweed's quite young in the spring, it's nature's wild asparagus.
In Tim's culture, fireweed signals an important seasonal harvest.
For us, when it flowers, that's when the salmon are running. I'm originally from BC, so as soon as that happens, then you know that the salmon are coming. My family is from a community called Telus, where now is understood as the Lower Nickel Indian Band outside of Merritt, British Columbia. I've always fished, I've always harvested, whether it be wild foods or gardens. Everybody had a garden back in the day. And it was a big part of our culture and a big part of life.
Harvesting fireweed tea doesn't mean killing the plants.
So in this case, you're after a leaf, you're using a leaf for tea. So rather than taking entire plant, it's just to come and snip off, 3 leaves off this plant, 3 leaves off this one, 3 leaves off this one. And I can quite easily get my nice jar of leaves for fireweed tea and still leave these strong plants intact.
The dandelion is big, eh?
Yeah, not so many here though, that's good. Lots of red clover.
Mm-hmm.
Many plants found on hiking trails are introduced species.
There's another interesting plant here that's an introduced plant. Introduced by the Europeans, introduced to feed cows. And also one that's very common for bees to use to make honey. So this is red clover. Clovers are typically a 3-leafed plant. The flower and leaves at the bottom of the flower, base of the flower, I use to dry them and make tea. Before the flowers come, the life force energy's in the leaves and stem when it's younger, and you can steam that as a green vegetable.
Some European imports have become an important part of the wild environment.
Some have been noxious weeds and problematic, but others actually have been beneficial and assisted. Things like dandelion or clover. So we would pick it and actually use it as a mixture in other foods, something that tastes good, right?
We have another good medicine here. This non-native plant that the coast Salish called white man's footprint. The Red River carts came and the grains came, and this wonderful weed showed up, and it's been very utilized by First Nations and Europeans alike. And again, very distinctive veins that are very 3-dimensional and rough. And because they're so firm, when you pull on them like this, the hairs, like celery hairs, strings, which are the inner workings of the veins, come apart. But it's a key way to identify this plant called common plantain. And it's also one of those plants where in the spring, which is when most of these plants are young, the leaves are one of my favorite salad greens.
Julie and Tim say the forest has much to offer us if we learn where to look.
Oh, I'm excited about this guy. It's So stinging nettle is pretty neat because people will pay a lot of money for superfoods. And this plant contains vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin K, calcium, magnesium, manganese, protein, and iron.
Hikers often fear stinging nettles, but they can be helpful.
For us, it's a medicine plant, medicinal. A lot of my aunts and uncles, they have arthritis, and so they'll pick it and they'll basically hit the area that they have the arthritis, and basically they're stinging themselves, but that toxin relieves the pain.
Oh, lovely. A beautiful doe mule deer. Hi, sweetie. You having a good forage? You look like you're healthy.
The foothills are highly diverse because of changes in elevation and forest cover.
A little narrower here.
These are big, eh?
Yeah, these are really good ones. Look at the contrast with the larkspur and I mean, this is, look at these two together. That is so awesome. This is cow parsnip. What I like to do is I cut it into little chunks about this long, and because it's a hollow stem, I just slice it open and stuff it with feta cheese and then cook it with onions and garlic and sunflower seeds.
Cow parsnip is tasty in the spring, but becomes toxic by midsummer.
Quite woody now. You have to know when that is and where best to harvest that, right? A lot of people will go, oh, I can eat that plant, but you know, you don't want to eat it now. You want to eat it just when it's starting to come out of the ground, is when it's most edible.
Late summer is wild berry season in the forest.
This plant is really, really important out here in the western slopes. Albertans will identify it as buffalo berry. Everywhere else in the country, we call it soapberry or supala. And the berries are edible for us out in the interior of British Columbia. We make what's called hushum. We'll crush it up and we'll whip it into like an egg white, which we identify as Indian ice cream. And it's really good.
When you harvest buffalo berries, you may have to share.
Bears will go through a lot of these. They're really, really gentle. And they'll actually just go and use their lips to pluck the berries off.
Not all of the wild fruit are safe to eat.
This one is called Banberry, and although it's a beautiful shiny red berry that looks very tempting, this is one of our very few toxic berries. So if you have a child, for example, eating 3 or more of these berries, you will be going to the hospital with that child. So you want to be really careful.
It's important to know what you're picking.
I have not seen this particular critter before. I have 5 edible mushroom species that I know really well. And this is not one of them. There's not a lot of poisonous mushrooms in Alberta, but they can make you very sick.
For food foragers, a little knowledge goes a long way.
It's really important to have that bigger picture if you are going to forage.
It's understanding and having knowledge of plants, also having knowledge of the ecosystem itself.